Welcome to Cars on Call. I am gastroenterologist and automotive journalist Steve Schutz. I'm here with co-host Stephan Moran, trauma surgeon Stephan Moran, automotive collector connoisseur, and I'm going to say consultant, because you kind of are, Adams Hudson. And we got a bunch to
I was
cover
hanging
today.
on the edge to hear what word you were going to use. And I'm unexpectedly flattered, but I'll take it.
That's totally true. We got some news that involves Mercedes and Mercedes BEVs, the best or nothing. And then we're going to talk about kit cars. We're going to talk automotive safety from a trauma surgeon's perspective. And that's something that makes us unique. So we always cover that, and it's so important. And then we've got at the end, we're going to talk about the $80,000 collector car. So we're all going to pick one. Stephan, you came up with this idea, and we started with $35,000, went to $50,000. Now it's going to be $80,000. But let me start with the news. The best or nothing, right? Mercedes said they're going to start making their own bespoke charging stations, and I read that. Stephan, I think we talked about that a few months ago. Adams, I don't know if you remember that, but it came up, and then I thought, all right, the best or nothing, it's going to be the best. It turns out these charging stations are going to be at Buc-ees. Buc-ees, I never heard about Buc-ees till I went down to Atlanta. Stephan, you told me about them. Stephan, I guess you can comment. Is this the best or nothing?
I think it's awful. I mean, Buc-ees is great for what it is, but
let's tell our listeners what it is.
So Buc-ees is this gas station, like 100 pumps, 10,000 pounds of jerky hanging on the walls, the cleanest bathrooms on the interstate, without a doubt. But you'll be going down the interstate, and all of a sudden traffic is slamming on brakes, coming to halts, because everybody's lined off to go to Buc-ees. It is a interstate destination.
It's got the building, right? I mean, it's got 100 pumps, but the building is as big as a Home Depot.
Oh, absolutely. And I just can't imagine a Mercedes owner or high-end vehicle owner wanting to go to Buc-ees. I mean, I walked in there and I couldn't get out fast enough. It's just too many people. It's just people everywhere. And it's great, clean bathrooms, but it's like Bass Pro Shop on the interstate. It's the same thing everywhere, multiple places. It's just I can't see Mercedes people wanting to go to Buc-ees to recharge.
Well, that's my question. Adams, I'll ask you, what percentage of Buc-ees customers, if you walk in, you'd say those are Mercedes people?
Right at zero, Steve. I tell you, it is an absolute spectacle. I can remember it's based in Texas, started in Texas, and I went to pick my daughter up one time. She was going to TCU, which is in Fort Worth, Texas, and we're driving from Fort Worth to Houston, about a 4-hour drive, which in Texas is like right next door, and we're going down the interstate and we see a sign for Buc-ees. And she goes, "You ever heard of Buc-ees?" I said, "I don't know what Buc-ees is." She goes, "You can't wait to see Buc-ees." So there's about 30 billboards, every couple of miles. There's something about Buc-ees. We go to it. I am in disbelief. You can buy cowboy boots, 500 different versions of barbecue or jerky, like Stephan said. No, it is not the Mercedes. I really can't imagine a Mercedes guy driving down the interstate and going, "Man, I could rip into some beef jerky right now."
Where are the Gucci driving loafers? Yeah, where are the Gucci driving loafers?
Varieties just to narrow it down. It is, in marketing, we talk about a message to market match, like a demographic match. This would not be it. I honestly almost can't figure it out, and the crowd that Stephan mentions is absolutely true. I'm in Florida, from Alabama. They're in Georgia and Texas, and I think mostly in the Southeast. And there's 3 phases of popularity. There's novelty, trend, and movement, in that order. Novelty has the shortest shelf life. Movement has the longest. I honestly feel like this is a novelty. I don't know if it's going to have staying power. Maybe it will, and I'll be proven wrong, but it does not seem to be a match for Mercedes customers.
Yeah, when you get in there, if you have a Mercedes SUV and it's gas powered, you go to Buc-ees, you get your jerky and you gas up, and you're out of there in 10 or 15 minutes. These electric car guys, they're going to be stuck there for an hour.
And they'll be shopping. It's a circus type environment. It really
So I
is.
think we're unanimous, right? This is a dumb move.
Dumb move.
Yeah, it's not.
Great move for Buc-ee's. Great move for just an awkward alliance.
You know what that reminds me of? It reminds me of, I worked in a lab when I was in high school because I wanted to go to medical school. So I was working at this lab, and one of the PhDs in the lab had put this cartoon up on the on the refrigerator. And of course, the late 70s was a really tough economic time. But anyway, it was like a diner. It was the inside of a diner, like a Mel's Diner thing. And the Mel character from the diner is talking to the waitress, and he said, "I told you we were a class place. I just hired a PhD to wash our dishes." And that's what this is like. It's like, yeah, now I told you we were a class place. Mercedes is going to let their customers charge here at Buc-ee's.
Perfect. Well, I tip of the days to the ladies who may be watching in their electric Mercedes stopping at Buc-ee's. You may not want to change clothes in the restroom. Maybe you did. I don't know if you heard this. Buc-ee's friend is being brought up on charges in a couple of dozen Buc-ee's of installing hidden cameras.
Oh,
he's in a little trouble there.
Yeah, I could imagine.
Yeah.
That's terrible.
At a place like Buc-ee's, how do you even think for a second there's not cameras in there? If you're a woman, it's like, come on, it's Buc-ee's. Of course, there's a camera in there. Even if the people own it don't, some dude is going to put cameras up because it's Buc-ee's.
It's Buc-ee's.
Anyway, Stephan did the Porsche track experience, the Masters edition, but I think you have a little shout out for a listener first. But talk about the Porsche experience after you tell us about a word from our listener.
Well, hey, I didn't apparently get the message because you guys are both wearing your Cars on Call zip tee that I got. Steve has sent me one too. I did not get the message to wear it like you twins, but I am wearing a super cool shirt. The Fangio.
Ooh.
Okay, you're out of trouble. That's pretty good looking.
It lists all his 5 championships and all the victories. And what's really cool about it, I'm just a huge Fangio fan. I've got a tag limited edition Fangio watch.
Wow.
Here are the picture of the car that Fangio drove that's actually in the museum in Stuttgart that I got to see. That's Sterling Moss's car, the 722 behind it that won the Mille Miglia. So big thanks to Jimbo Walter, who's an avid listener, his son Colin as well, for giving me the shirt for my birthday. So, all right. So let's talk about the Porsche experience. So last year, Steve-O and I and Brett Willams and Patrick, Steve-O's son, we did the Porsche one-day experience. And I got so fired up.
Brett, by the way, is a retired fighter pilot who was a Cars on Call guest. So
yes,
a great
that's right.
guest. And Patrick, we quote Patrick a lot. So anyway, it was the 4 of us.
So we all graduated to the master's class, and I was hot shoe that day, had the fastest lap the first day. I knew going to this master's that I was going to get passed by people, including women. I got passed by 2 women. There were some fast shoes. And the funny story, I saw one of the ladies and I said, "Man, you're really a hot shoe." And I was like, that's probably not so politically correct to say to a woman at an event. But anyway, so I did the 2-day course. It's the master's. You have to graduate, be fast enough to get to it. And it's a 2-day course. The first day, both days, kind of like when you do technical and portions and track portions, but they really ramp up the technical portion on this. You're doing a figure of 8 autocross. You're doing a figure of 8 skid pad, and they're teaching you more about braking and how to be better with your braking, which will segue us into the safety segment. And it tells you how to set up your car when you're braking and you're accelerating as well. We drove the Cayman GT4, the Taycan Turbo S, and the 911 GTS. All the track time was in the GTS, and finally I got to go on the track without following somebody. So your first session is lead, where you're following the instructor, 3 to 4 cars behind it, and you swap out. And then after that, you're on the track by yourself. They let you out in groups, and that was absolutely fantastic. A little bit nerve-wracking, but actually I found it better than following. So, and then they had instructors set up at the big corners that would then watch you come through and take notes. So after you did your 30-minute session, they came back and they reviewed, going into turn 11, you had a little too much brake, just barely touched the brake. You came in a little hot there, Stephan, got a little sideways. Yeah.
Probably heard
hey,
that a couple times.
I know I kept all four wheels on the pavement. I did take out some cones. I just barely clipped them coming out too fast out of the S turns. I was carrying too much speed, and I was on a little bit of the gas.
Hey,
So
Steph,
that was
in the group. Can you pass? Are you allowed to pass?
So there are 3 passing sessions. The first day was kind of a little bit of a melee. I got stuck behind people. And then basically they told us, listen, guys, if you see headlights in your mirror, that means they caught you. Okay. You need to just get over at the next session. So finally people learned. I'd see headlights coming up behind me and I'd wait. There's 3 passing zones. And what you do is you always stay in the racing line. So if you look at racing series that have mixed cars at different levels, you stay in the racing line and the person who's passing has to go outside of the line. So it could be one session, the main straight is a left only pass, the other were right or left. So what I would do, and people started doing this, is when you're going into the corners, coming out of a sharp corner, getting ready to hit one of these straights, I would have my blinker on in the corner before the straight, letting that person know so I wouldn't come so hot out of the corner so he could pass me early on the straight, which then allowed me to get back to full speed to take the next corner at the proper speed.
Gotcha.
So it was really, we just had a blast. And the session by yourself is where you really learn how to drive a car at its level. The lead and followed, I got an idea, but that was the best part. And it was actually fatiguing, but by the last session on the second day, I made a couple mistakes, just minor mistakes, but I was tired. But I really learned, I was taking some corners at 90 to 100 miles an hour that I would never believe possible. So it was absolute blast. And we did the autocross thing. So we had a team of, there were 5 of us, and all teams were 5 people. And then they set up the autocross, and then everybody does 3 laps, and you have to do pit changes. So you come in, park the car, and the guy's got to walk out, get in the car, take off, do 3 laps. Our team, we didn't even make top 3. We had 6 cone violations, and he who shall not be named, and it was not me, missed the pit box, and that was a 10-second penalty. He went past the pit box because you had to keep it within the cones. But I met a great guy named Alex Holt, who is from England, and he did not make the pit error. But the 3 of these guys came from California. They're all big-time Porsche fans, Porsche owners, and they are going to go drive the Tuthill Porsche Below Zero experience in Sweden. Porsches all they're kind of like a little bit safaris, but they got studded tires, and you race on a lake. So it teaches you really all about car control.
A frozen lake, I hope.
It's a frozen lake way north of the Arctic Circle. And so we're going to have Alex on this show because he's a huge Porsche guy, very knowledgeable cars guy. He's going to talk about, he's been a lot of driving schools, and I want to hear all about this driving on the snow. It just looks like it's an absolute blast.
Steph is looking at that photo, looking up the photo. I did the driving experience there. Well, I did the one in Atlanta and Birmingham, and then you do the day-long driving thing, which I think, Stephan, there you go. Goodness gracious, that just looks like a lot of fun.
Yes.
And I like that there's not that many things to hit.
Yeah, exactly. You just go off into the soft snow. I like that a lot.
The thing I loved about Barber is not only the wonderful instruction, and I, like you, Steph, I did not get a lot at all out of the lead, but I got a ton out of the follow. I actually tried to learn the line. But just the great thing is that it transfers to street safety in a sort of in a way that you would not think. You start to think about car control and braking distances and coming into turns too fast or too slow. And it doesn't.
Are you trying to introduce my safety segment, because there may be a segue?
Okay,
here.
well, I didn't mean to steal any thunder there, but honestly, you really do start. You change the way you look at things, and if it does segue, terrific. But I mean, you start looking at how really poorly a lot of drivers drive, and they always say that the race car drivers, the professional ones, though they might be a little aggressive, they're not the most dangerous on the road. Like you might think, oh, they're the ones who are going 150 miles an hour in Europe. No, they're not. They're the ones who are probably the safest and most car aware.
Yeah, we when we spoke of the late Joe Bezzetta, Porsche racing car driver from the 60s who died earlier this year. I went to high school with his son, who's been on the show as well, and he was the father was a very safe driver. And I just remember when I was a kid, just being stunned by how safe he was, what a great driver he was, and he wasn't even trying; he just was driving around. But yeah, you're right, Adams. He never really drove that fast. So great experience, Stephan. You loved it. It was fantastic, and yeah, I know you're already looking at another experience down the road. So good for you. That's just great. We might as well do safety now, since it does relate to the driving experience. So all three of us have been at the Porsche driving experience in Barber Park in Birmingham, Alabama, and we all give it a thumbs up. So anyway, safety.
So I think the most important thing that I've learned in my 3 days of high performance driving is braking. So the dynamics of braking. So how that, and it's not about accelerate. The cars accelerate, but let me tell you what, they brake way harder than they accelerate. And if you think about it, if you're going to be involved in an unfortunate near miss event or in a car crash, there's going to be braking involved. Hopefully you've seen something coming and you have a chance to hit the brakes. So what's interesting is that 69% of drivers don't press the brakes fast enough or hard enough to get the most stopping power of the brakes in motor vehicle collisions. So think about that. Only 31% of people out there are efficient with the brakes when they need to be before a crash. And so you got to think, when you think about braking, what they taught us is it's the idea of weight transfer and weight loading. So yes, when you hit the brakes, you're stopping a car, but what you're doing also is you're shifting the weight of the vehicle to the front tires. Therefore, loading the front tires allows them to grip better and turn better. So you can do this. So coming into a corner, if you hit the brakes before the corner, what you don't want to do is let off the brakes and then yank the wheel to the right. Because when you let off the brake, your front end comes back up. So what you want to do is keep your front end down and the tires loaded. So what they call trail braking, where you come into the corner hard on the brakes and you're actually braking around the apex. And then at the time you hit the apex, you're off the brake. That's called trail braking. That leaves the front end of the car. And what's interesting is you can do the same thing with your car coming into a corner. If you're a little bit slow, you floor it before the corner, let off the gas. So the nose goes up when you floor it, then you let off the gas, the nose drops and loads those tires, so then you can turn better. So we did that in some of the S turns and things like that. But what's important that I think is, we think about 69% of people don't brake effectively is, I've done this in my Mustang, is just find a wide piece of road or a parking lot where there's nobody there and slam on the brakes as hard as you can to feel the ABS. So cars have what's called anti-lock brake system. So what that means is when you brake to the maximum capacity of your car, you don't want the wheels and tires to lock up, because then you have no traction and you're just skidding like on ice. So the cars all now, unless you're getting a really old car, all modern cars have anti-lock brake systems. So what that does is it slowly releases the brake and lets the tire turn. Well, think about it, if you're doing that, you have just gone past the point of maximum braking. So you want to release on your brake pedal so you don't feel the pedal vibrate to hear your tires chirping. So we learned how to do that as well. Very important. That takes a lot of practice. I wouldn't want to wear out the pads on my regular car doing that exercise, but I think it's important for everybody is that you do take your car out, your daily driver, and you need to go somewhere where you can stand on the brakes. You need to feel what it's like, that it is a reflex. When you need to make a panic brake, you're not coming on the brakes and gently going to the floor. You are smashing it to the floor, and then you let up till you quit feeling it vibrate. And I cannot tell you how many exercises we did to learn that braking. And that's what driving on a racetrack all about, is 100% on the brake and then backing it off to the anti-lock brake system turns off. And then you do your corners. And how long you stay on the brake like that depends on the corner. But I highly recommend you do that. Now, one thing, if you do that in your car and you're going to heat up the brakes, what you don't want to do is come to a complete stop in your car and leave the brake on, because then your brake pads are touching the rotors, and that's how you warp your rotors. So if you're ever on the interstate or anywhere and have to make a panic stop from high speed, if you can find a way to let off the brakes, either put it in neutral, let them cool before you get a chance. Like if you're in the interstate and it comes to a slam stop and you're on your brakes screeching to a halt, if you can put it in neutral or something before, but the car still knows you're stopped behind you, but just don't leave your pads on there. So I think that's the one important thing that we learned. And if you are going to be in that kind of situation, panic brake, what you want to do, like if you can, if you have time, you only got, like I talked about, you got 1 second to think about all this, but practice is how it makes perfect. You're going to have an impact. You want to brace for impact, and you have your foot on the brake and you have your hands on the steering wheel, because the cars will also, they will have stability control. So you can actually steer better under braking than you think you can, because the minute the tire starts to slip, it's going to know it and it's going to come off the brakes anyway. But if you're going to brace for impact, what you want to do is you want to get yourself all the way back in your seat, your head against the backrest. And then at the moment before impact, your both feet off the floor and your hands off the steering wheel. Because what happens if your hands on the steering wheel, the airbag is going to blow, and it's going to blow your arms apart. And then if your window's closed, your arm could hit the A pillar or the B pillar of the window or wherever, and likely break an arm. And then if your foot is still smashed to the floor on the brake pedal and you have a frontal impact, you'll basically will drive your hip through your pelvis at the back, and you'll break your ankle and your foot as well. So that's what race car drivers all do. If you watch them, when they're in wrecks, if you watch the video, you'll see them bring their arms up before impact and their feet up and their head back, and that's how you manage. But practice your braking. You don't need to do it often, but just do it at least once, so you know how hard and how fast your car can stop and what it feels like, and it may save your life.
Steph, man, I tell you, you just like, you deliver on the safety stuff, because I mean, we start off talking about racing, which everybody thinks, oh, that's aggressive and that's hyper pushy and all this other stuff, and it's dangerous. Well, it's only dangerous if you do it wrong, or if you get with somebody who's maybe not versed in it. When you mentioned that about the race car drivers, and I think we've all seen that before, they do like that. But if you lift up your feet, now would that also apply to a street car where you don't have an anti-submarine belt?
Well, what I would do is I would get my feet off of the pedals, and basically it's going to happen so fast you're not going to have time. You're going to come forward anyway. But if you have your foot up on the brake pedal, it's what it is. It's your toes are across the brake pedal. So at that impact, what's going to happen is your heel is going to go forward over that brake pedal, and you're going to break your calcaneus and your talus, which are the two. Basically, you're going to break the bottom of your foot, your heel, right off. And that is a horrible injury. You'd rather break your femur or your tibia any day than break your foot like that. So the idea is you're just going to move your feet off so that your feet are still going to go forward, because you're, like well said, Adams, you don't have a submarine, but your feet are not going to stop you. Or if you have your feet flat on the floor, that is better than having one up against the pedal. Now, if you have your foot on the footrest on the left, which is a nice flat footrest, that's going to distribute the pressure evenly. But classically, it's that brake pedal that results in those foot fractures.
Got you.
Wow. Thank you. That's great. And thankfully, no one at the track experience had to do any of those maneuvers, because
nobody got towed away. Nobody got towed away. There were a couple cones taken out. A couple people got. If you did take out cones, you had to come into the pits to make sure you didn't damage one of the radiators. I came out of the S's and what I called frisbeed the cones. I came just a little bit wide, so the car was sliding and it just hit the flat portion of the cone. So they just kind of spun. I did not drive over the cones, but there were several cones that did get drawn over. But that's a fabulous track, and I swear, Barber is one of the coolest tracks that you can go to, and you can do performance driving and not kill yourself, unlike Road Atlanta, Laguna Seca, where you've really got a risk of getting injured. I'm sure there have been some injuries and crashes at Barber, but it's rare. Otherwise, Porsche wouldn't be staying there if that wasn't the case. Letting people go on 120, 125 miles an hour down a straight into a sharp left-hander. I mean, clearly, they figure it's a good place, a safe place to allow people to push the limits in a vehicle.
All right. Well, we're going to talk about hit cars, and this was inspired. The idea was inspired by I think Adams, you saw a kit car and you spotted it, and you said, "Hey, we should talk about kit cars we love and hate." And there it is. Stefan, why don't you just describe that?
Okay, so this is
That's in Stephan's love category, isn't it?
so listeners.
Yeah.
This is, imagine if you took a 57 Chevy with the giant fenders, slapped that on the back half of a C4 Corvette, which is it's got the big round window, and it did the same on the front end. This is a monstrosity defined. This thing is just god awful ugly. I mean, this thing is just so awful looking. And Adams, where did you see this thing?
I saw this at what is called Cruising the Coast in Panama City, Florida. That's in Northwest.
Well,
Florida.
there you go.
There you go. Yeah, there you go. I'll leave it there. Talk about your demographic overload. This is your Buc-ees crowd come to life, and that particular car. I feel like, and Stephan, you mentioned it before the show started, that it may have been sort of based super loosely on a way more handsome Boyd Coddington design, which was called the Chevrolet Zoom, and it was, I don't know, just a better looking car, but the basis of it was a sort of a retro throwback. And it took some modern cues and some vintage cues and some classic cues, where this one is a whole different amalgam of ill-fitting, ill-proportioned sort of styles. And I wish I would have gotten a photo from the side. It was kind of crammed into a bunch of cars, but this is potentially sold as a kit, potentially sold as a real thing. And if our listeners know what this is called, I could not find it. And I've seen other ones out there before. I could not find it online to know exactly what it's called. But it did spark the conversation about, they're good kits and they're bad. No, so there's the real Shazam.
That one's, that's good.
Yeah, now that's got some elegance to it. It's exaggerated as all heck, and that probably was in the Riddler finals if it didn't actually win it. But there's good and bad kit cars, or component cars, replica cars, tribute cars. They're all sort of a blended terminology of these cars that are not maybe manufacturer made, but more or less in the broadest use kit. And
let's go to Black's Law Dictionary.
Let's do that.
Before you do, I got something to say about if you put up the 57 C4, again, you're melding a 57 Chevy, which is beautiful, with the 4th generation Corvette, which is pretty decent looking. And this reminds me, I think this is Winston Churchill. I don't know. It doesn't matter, but it could be Winston Churchill, where a famous, beautiful Hollywood actress was talking to him. And she said, imagine if we had a child, if it had your brains and my looks, it would be amazing. And he said, yeah, but what if it had my looks and your intelligence, or your brains? And that's what this is. It's the worst of both worlds.
Yeah. But this thing is just awful. It's like, I think the other quote with Winston Churchill was someone said that, Sir Winston Churchill, you are drunk. He said, yes, I may be drunk, but I shall be sober in the morning, but you are ugly and you shall still be ugly in the morning. Something similar to that. But anyway, Black's
he's got a lot of quotes.
There's a lot of great quotes.
And that ties in, because this is still ugly in the morning.
Ugly in the morning.
This is still ugly in the morning. He also had a quote that actually, this is another quote that I also think of with this car, and that is somebody said, a woman said, "You're a terrible person. If you were my husband, I would poison your coffee." And he said, "Yeah, and if you were my wife, I would drink it." Well, that's with this one. I would drink the poison. Who wants to wake up to this?
Anyway, so let's go to Black, since we're talking about, and I'm building call it what you want, but we're going to do Black's Law Dictionary here. So a replica, built as a replication of the original in all aspects, an exact reproduction, a copy exact in all details. A kit is an assembly built from a list of parts, normally not to replicate, but to sell at a lower cost. Now, insurance companies will say that if it's built by a factory, it is a replica. But if it's home built, it is a kit car. So when you go to insure it. So as you can see, there are, I'm a Cobra fanatic, and the only Cobra in my mind that defines the word replica is a Kirkham Cobra. The Kirkham brothers took apart their 427, CAD-cammed it, went to Poland, bought a MIG factory, have the aluminum bodies made in Poland. The frames are made over there as well. You can interchange any component on a Kirkham Cobra with a real Cobra. So that means it's not an improvement over the old. They did a few improvements, and some of the tubes are thicker to make it stiffer. But you take a Super Performance or one of the Carroll Shelby CSX Cobras, the continuation Cobras, they're not exact reproductions. So however you want to, if you want to nitpick the word, some are better than others. And I think something that you buy pretty much as a rolling chassis, and you stick as close as can to the original. But I think you put a small block in a Cobra instead of a large block in a 427. That's more of a kit than a replica to me. But anyway, we'll move forward. There's been some good examples and some bad examples.
Sadly, there probably been more bad ones, which will make our discussions on the good ones not only unique, but sort of elevated above the crowd.
All right, Steve, let's start off. I got a picture.
We could do lots of shows about kit cars, and we don't want to. No. Nobody will want to listen because there's a lot more bad than good. But yeah, yes. we each picked 3 that we like or don't like, and so that was the thing. All right, I'll go through.
All right, Steve, you're up.
Yeah, I'll go through mine. Bradley GT, and this was popular in the 70s. I've seen many of them around when I was a child and teenager. They just look weird. They kind of look like a Corvette, but they're on a Volkswagen Beetle chassis. So you've got really very little, obviously, performance. Yeah, they're light because it's fiberglass and there's not much to it, so it's light. But this has very little performance, and it doesn't look good. And then it sounds like a Volkswagen Beetle with that air-cooled 4-cylinder engine. It's just terrible. It's just bad. So that was my first choice. The first one I thought of, but this is just bad.
I think that's a lot of people. Like when you say kit car, at least to somebody of our generation, that is the first car I think of is the Bradley GT.
Yep.
Yeah. For me, it's the second. I think of the Steve-O's next picks first, but think of the number of kit cars that were done on Volkswagens back in the day. And we're going to see several more, but they were cheap chassis to get, cheap engines to work on. And it really became quite a thing to throw a fiberglass body on one of these.
The 70s, we've talked about that. The 70s were just an ugly generation. Everything was ugly. And this was not a kit car, but you guys remember this. It was very common to have a Volkswagen Beetle where you put a hood on it that had a Rolls-Royce grill.
Oh, God. I came across that in the research for this.
Yeah. So my next one is cool. This is the Myers-Manx dune buggy, and they took, again, a Volkswagen Beetle chassis, and you turned it into a dune buggy, and you drove across the sands of California with Gidget, I guess, and your girlfriend. It was great. So this was a good one. The Bradley.
It was the epitome of cool. I mean, to see somebody going around in a dune buggy, that was just. They were cooler. They were just it. That was it. That was the coolest thing possible as a kid. If you were anywhere from 10 to 20 years old and you saw one of these things, you just wanted to be that person.
And I remember seeing those on the street, and you look at like that bumper is basically like a weightlifting bar, but probably hollowed out, and the big frog looking eyes. It's hard to say that's a handsome look, but it's a fun look. And it's all that car was built to do is to be fun. Actually, Bruce Meyer, who is not the same Bruce Meyer who owns all the high dollar collector cars in California, the real estate developer, different Bruce Meyer, made this car, and he sold a blooming ton of them. There are no doors, there's no roof provision really. And that car probably weighs 1,000 pounds sopping wet, if that. And it's just, it does what it's supposed to do. It bounces around the sand. It's a fun car. It's a surfer dude kind of car. but I used to see them all over Montgomery, Alabama growing up, and they were generally not this attractive paint color. They were like some kind of horrible bass boat looking metallic, but that was fine in the day.
Hey, do you think, thinking about this and talking about reminiscing, seeing these as kids, do you think this deserves to be the very first vehicle that sold a lifestyle? It sold an image of an, I mean, now we got the SUV, the Jeep, the Jeepers that don't go off-road. But this thing, when you bought this thing, you were buying, the Beach Boys, California, surfing, life's good, life's fun. This was the first, I think, true lifestyle vehicle that you bought this because you wanted to feel that way.
I think that's a very appropriate point to make. If it's not the one, it is certainly in the pantheon of maybe the top three.
That started that whole trend
of what I stand for. Go ahead.
It started the trend of selling a lifestyle.
Yeah.
An image, a wannabe, a poser.
That's a great observation. I had not thought of that, and I think you're exactly right, Stephan. This really was a lifestyle, and I totally agree with Adams. The metallic paint on these things was like it was like glitter.
Yeah, was it? Yeah, your Bassmasters. A bass boat, like Adam said.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah,
like if you put a mirror in a blender and then poured some paint in it, that's what it was.
And they're going to come out with the Myers electric. They're making this car an electric version, which would be really cool.
Yeah, I think it's Myers instead of Meyer.
Meyer, yeah.
If the Bradley GT is just pathetic because you're trying too hard and it doesn't work, this is just cool, even with the metallic paint. And then my last one, it's not a kit car, of course. This is the actual manufactured car. But I just wanted to bring it up so I could say, what the fuck were these guys thinking about? Panos. This is a Panos Esperante. And these guys said, oh, yeah, we're going to make our own manufacturer. So they basically they did make their own, platform. They made their own car. It was a unibody car. But they just took Mustang engines. They took Ford Mustang engines. And the interior had a lot of Mustang bits in it. And it was like sad. It never succeeded. If you can't see the picture, it looks kind of like a mix between a Miata and I don't even know, maybe the Bradley GT. How about that? But it's just, no, the Panos was stupid. And I just wanted to say that. And that's why I'm like, this is my excuse to say the Panos was stupid. They should have never tried.
But it's better looking than the A1V, I guess, the sort of open wheel Lotus 7-esque sort of look. But this car, they came so close to me, the different tastes. They came close with this car. The rear end, I think, is very attractive, but the front end, the grill looks like it either smells something or it's got a cheek full of walnuts. I'm not sure, but that's true. And it's got like a 4.6 Ford motor in it, well back in the chassis, the Ford 5-speed. It is really a decent performer for what it is, and I think it's well appointed. It just looks a little weird.
Not as weird as this right here.
That's my
Here we
three.
go.
All right, let's go for it.
The Panos Roadster.
Yeah, that was ridiculous.
And of course, Don Panos made $1 trillion with the what do they call the thing? The cigarette patch, the thing that keeps you from
transdermal medication. He invented transdermal medication.
Right.
All right, Adams. Let me see. I'm going to pull up yours. All right, boom. Here we go, Adams.
Oh, you gotta love it. Wait, no, that's actually a real Ferrari Enzo, isn't it? Oh, wait, no, that's a Fiero. I love how they put the vent.
So tell our listeners, describe this to our listeners.
Yeah.
I can't. I'm sorry. I've
So
run out of words.
They took a Fiero and tried to make it look like a Ferrari and called it the Fieri.
Yep. And it's sort of, honestly, I had to look at it for about 5 minutes to figure out what they were trying to make it look like. And I'm going to say it's an Enzo. It's got an incredibly elongated snout, as if maybe it's told several lies in a row, and it's stretched way out. It's got front fender heat extractor vents, which is unusual to me on a mid-engine car, but I'm no engineer. And it's just very, very truncated and very smashed together. And I don't know, it's just sort of got a little bit of an aardvark look, and it's the ugliest kit car I've ever seen, and that's saying something.
Yeah.
Well, that's why it was the Concord de Lemon's worst in-show winner. And I mean, think about it. If you drove up this thing into Cars and Coffee, you'd be the hit, man. People would you would be the hit. It sold for $5,950. I'm telling you, you think about the amount of laughs you could get for $6,000 and the entertainment value of this. That's a lot of entertainment for $6,000. I'm just telling you.
I get going to Cars and Coffee with this, and I get taking it to the Concord de Lemons. I get all that. I don't get all of the hours that somebody spent actually building this.
Yep.
Steve, that's a good point, because somebody had to see it through. It's just shocking.
All right,
Somebody had to
take you
conceive
your
of
next
it.
one here.
They had to conceive
Oh,
of
we
it,
got
and
another
then they had
bad.
then they had to do it. All right, let's see this.
Okay, this is the Laser 917K, based off what would have been the Porsche by the same number. And this car, at the time, it actually had a minor. Where did it go? Yeah. Oh, Elite Enterprises made this thing. And in the movie, I did not see the movie, but some of our listeners may have. And Steve is our resident movie trivia expert. Herbie Goes to Monte Carlo. This car was in, or the Laser 917 was in Herbie Goes to Monte Carlo. And this car was based on, oh, God. It's got the one that Stephan just pulled up. It's got the Western Cyclone wheels, and it's got the stripes down the side, the laser stripe down the side. It's
Wasn't
got
this based on a VW as well?
Oh, 100%. Yes.
100%. Okay, 100%. All right.
Yeah. Rear engine VW. God, that one almost looks okay. I guess compared to what we've been looking at, but I have a mildly embarrassing story to tell. When I was in college, there was a guy drove a yellow and black Laser 917. This is about 1980 or 81, and I'd been at a party rather late. There could have been drinking involved. I'm not super sure. And I asked him, I said, could you please take me by my house and on air? And he said, yes. So a friend of mine, he takes me to my house. I go inside. He does not know what I go get inside. And then I get back in his car, and we drive, and it's just, where we're going. And I said, we're going to go see this this kit car that I've been seeing around campus. He goes, what are we going to do when we get there? I said, well, you're going to stop the car. I'm going to get out, and I'm going to shoot it. I had gone in my house and gotten a 22 Ruger, and I was just going to shoot a hole in it. And thankfully, Ted Gilchrist, if you're out there listening, thank you for saving me from what may have been a felony, and talked me out of it, because I was just so incensed that this car existed. It just unnerved me that it was out. So that's how much I hate this car.
Oh, that is a funny story.
And there we go with a beautiful, goodness gracious.
Let me get it back.
Make them trying to sell some t-shirts there.
There we go.
There we go. I mean, look at that. And that is based on what we're looking at is a Daytona replica, factory 5.
The Daytona Coupe. Yeah, the Shelby Daytona Coupe.
I think their name is maybe the 65 Coupe, but it's based on the Daytona. And it's got bigger wheels. I'm guessing those are 17s or 18s, and they're based on the Hala brand. And this particular one is in dark blue. I think the description says it's maybe Pozzi blue, which is a Ferrari color. It's a fabulous looking car. It's got the Coyote motor in it, and it's just based off the Daytona. I mean, how do you get any prettier than that? And this is a decently built car. It's not a factory car. You can build it in your garage. But that was my win kind of car. I thought that is a great kit.
And Superformance does one as well, at a whole lot more price. Now here's I got to find the picture. I've got one more Cobra for you to look at the Coupe.
Jeff, I didn't even know Superformance did it. Oh, there's a winner.
Yeah, I got to find this other. I got to find another. I'm going to find a picture here of another Coupe not done well. But the Superformance makes a very nice one. Factory 5 is a good, but it really is a kit. You've got to put that together yourself, and you've got to find the components for it. And but yeah, it's good picks there. I can't
Go
find the
ahead,
picture of the one I
Stephan.
wanted. But
Let's
all right,
show
my
yours.
turn.
Yeah.
All right, so let me start off. All right, we're gonna start off with bad. Here, let me share my screen. Here we go. Here is bad. The
Oh, geez.
Excalibur.
Yeah,
So
of course.
listeners, this is this like 20-foot long car that they pulled every design feature from the 20s and 30s and slapped them all together onto one. Started off as a Studebaker chassis. So it's got Mercedes elements, it's got Rolls-Royce elements, it's got Packard elements, it's got it's just they're just god awful. I mean, but they were actually
let's
they
not
made a
forget
couple
the
hundred of
wire
these.
wheels.
Yeah. And why this thing is just awful. You just imagine the worst. But they sold a lot of these, including Arnold Schwarzenegger has one of these things and
Wow.
drove it around.
Uh,
It's awful, but it gets worse.
uh,
So they slapped on the Volkswagen, they slapped all kind of kit cars. Well, they actually took the MG TD replica. And if you think of a really old MG with pontoon fenders, you've probably seen it. What you probably really saw was one of these replicas. And I would see these. And so it's got like a 7-foot long hood, of which there's nothing in it because it's a Volkswagen with the engine in the back. And I would see one of these with the engine hanging out the back. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me. These things are just atrocious. But
we got to see a side view of that thing with whatever's hanging out the back. Oh, Lord.
They're just awful. So that was, and then, so the replica I'm going to get into that I do like are the Cobra replicas. And I'm a big fan of the ERA. They've been around since 1981. Peter Portera built his first car off of one of his own. And over the years that they've been making these, mine is chassis going to be 853. They've continued to improve on the car. And they drive fabulous. They look great. And they're very true to the original, except for the frame. But it has steel panels down the side of the door. So it has side impact protection, which none of the original Cobras had. If I could have my money, I mentioned the Kirkham Cobra. These are the ones that are basically exact replicas, but they're about 3 to 4 times the cost of an ERA. They used to be affordable, but they're not affordable anymore. So those are my picks for.
Can I say one thing
kit cars
before you switch on? Your pick. What the listeners may or may not know is that Stephan is not just sort of an armchair enthusiast of the Cobra and or the component makers that create the copies, the replicas, the tributes. He knows all the design cues and nuances between the designers and which is which. I sent him a photo 2 days ago when I was at the car show of one from a distance that I didn't particularly like. I didn't know why I didn't like it, but I sent it to Stephan. I said, do you know which maker this is? And out of how many makers are there? A dozen or more?
Yeah, I think now we currently have at least 6 or 7, I think.
Okay, but you picked it out. You knew exactly which maker it was based on the door hinges. So this is not a man who takes his topic lightly. And so when you've chosen that ERA, you've chosen it after great research, and we all look forward to seeing it and getting the ride in it that you've promised us all.
Well, the tribute, Peter Portera built his ERA, and he had a 427 Street in British Racing Green, and he parked it next to a real one. And famously, Carroll Shelby couldn't point out which was the ERA and which was the original.
Wow.
Yeah, because he had his original car and then his first replica that he made. You couldn't tell the difference between the two. If you open the hood, you could look at the frame and tell the difference. I think we got to do a quick couple honorable mentions before we get to the last one here.
Yep.
Here we go. Adams, here's one of your honorable mentions.
Man, oh man, that's a Beck 904, what we're looking at. And this is one that was an unfinished roller that was on Bring a Trailer. Also finished in dark blue, but this is based on the original Porsche 904, which was sort of, but not quite sold as a street car. And to me, it's the prettiest of maybe all the Porsches up until the Carrera GT. And if the Boxster had looked like this, I would own it.
Yeah,
And
it's gorgeous.
it's, you can put in the middle, you can put a 2-liter all the way up to maybe a 3.2 or a 3.4 before you have to start getting serious. And they'll build you a finished car. They'll sell you about an 80% finished car. And I would get that one. I would take off the French approved yellow driving lights. I would go with widened steel wheels instead of Fuchs. I can't believe I just said that. And I would put the 3-liter SC motor in and get electric air conditioning and call it a day.
I thought you wanted this one here, though.
And who wouldn't?
So
this is a dishonorable mention.
Yeah, we showed a picture of another. This is where they put a Mercedes SSK on a Volkswagen. Another awful thing.
They called it a Gazelle.
Ooh. Let's move on.
Let's move on. All right.
All right. Yeah.
Things up for the last.
The whole category is a reminder that there's many people with just bad taste. And let's be grateful. If that weren't the case, many people that you see walking around would not be married. So I guess it's all good.
All right, so here we go. We did the $35,000 collector car. Then the kids wanted some backseat time, so we did the $50,000 car. Now you've had another good year, and you're going to sell off your last car.
So we each pick what you're saying.
So this one you get a pick. You get $80,000, and you get to pick a collector car to go in your garage. Remember, because your car still got it. You got a 2-car garage still. So your regular daily's going out, and this one's going in the garage.
Wait a minute, Steve. I picked 6 like I did last week. So I need to scratch a couple.
All right, Steve-O, what you gonna do?
I will start. Yeah. For the 50,000, I picked the original BMW M5, and that was really cool. But I went a very different direction. I grew up with Plymouths. My mom was always driving Plymouths. She'd always drive used cars, used Plymouths. And we had 3 different E-body Barracudas. And the last one we had was a 1974, and it's got the shotgun headlights. 73 and 74, 1973, 1974 have the shotgun headlights. So I like those. So this is a 1974 Resto Mod. And 1973 and 1974 for muscle cars, they sucked. All the catalytic converters and rules and fuel economy. You don't want that. So I'd have a crate motor, and I'd love to have a Hellcat in one of these, but that's not $80,000. You can be paying a lot more. It's like $30,000 just for the engine. So just like a 340-ish, some kind of crate motor and a 5-speed transmission, and actually a 6-speed, but it doesn't matter. Manual transmission, a 1973 or 74 Barracuda Resto Mod. That's my choice.
Okay, you got to pick the color. What it is?
Oh yeah, it's it would have to be a bright color. It would have to be either a very bright orange or a very bright green for me.
Which might be what, vitamin C or sassy grass green?
Sassy grass. That's it. Those are all Mopar.
Yeah.
I thought you were making those up, Adam.
No, they had fun names. Whoever was in the color naming department was having a good time.
Yeah. All right. That's
all right. Let's go. We'll do Adams here. I got your picture pulled up. All right, here you go. I think this is what you picked, Adams.
It absolutely is what I picked, which is unusual for me because normally so this is the guy who's got the 80 grand to spend. I would normally be picking something that's maybe a little bit depressed in the curve and it's going to come back and pay him well. This one, I believe, is just almost undervalued. It's a 1967 Corvette, the last of the C2 cars. You can tell because it's got the 5 side vents. And this particular one that's a 327. It doesn't have the 427 hood, but you could get a project kind of 427 or a really, really nice 327. And this to me is the epitome of American style. This is Bill Mitchell design credit. It has a completely horizontal belt line that runs across, something that either he got from Ferrari or they got from him, and it doesn't matter because this is an incredible looking car. And this is when they started calling the Stingray. It's got the little roof ridge. Famously, a story when he was out fishing, he hooks a stingray, or somebody on the boat hooks a stingray, and the boat captain goes, we're going to cut that thing loose. We don't want it coming in the boat. He goes, what is it? He goes, it's called a stingray. It's trash fish. He goes, We don't even want to see it. It's the ugliest fish you've ever seen. He goes, no, he goes, I'm curious. I do want to see it. And they pull it up and he goes, that is the most beautiful fish I've ever seen. And the central spine, which famously spawned the original 63 with a split window, went away in 64, but by 67, they got that design right. It had four-wheel disc brakes, better suspension. You could, again, do the 427, but I would take a 327, 350 horse, 4-speed air conditioning car and be super happy. This one's in Goodwood green. I'd take about any color you had other than red.
I'll tell you, Adams, fantastic pick. Of all the Corvettes, the Stingray is my absolute favorite. And then our guest for during Thanksgiving week, Cal Gratzmiller from France, she rallies a 427 convertible Stingray in France. So yeah. So we'll have her talking.
France, yeah.
Yeah. So if I had to pick a Corvette, of course, the split window is out of price range, but I agree with you 100%. It's the epitome of design. And I think this design shape it'll look great in 50 to 100 years from now.
Agreed.
That's a great pick. This is back when the astronauts would drive these cars. This is a great pick.
All right. So I finally, this is my third collector car. I started with the Tiger. I had the Mustang. Now my wife has finally figured out that I'm not going to trade her up when I get a Porsche, like almost all wives do. That's what I know the day I get when she's going to think I'm trading her up, because that's just what she has, an image of a guy that buys a Porsche in midlife. But here's a 78 911 SC Coupe. I'm not totally excited about the little Carrera stripe down the side, but I do kind of like it. It's in a fantastic Minerva blue metallic. It's had a little bit of work done to it, so it's that's 86 grand. It's got an Alpine stereo in it, and this is the time when I was really starting to get into Porsche as a young man, and this whole era of the SC and the Carrera. I love these cars, and this would be my pick, and I'd finally have my Porsche.
Oh, it's a great pick. And the color, that's just perfect on that car.
I'm thinking that'd look good on my Cobra too. There's so many great blues out there.
Yep.
I just love the blues. So
yeah, I've got a thing for these G bodies. Absolutely beautiful. Great pick, Stephan. I get exactly those wheels. I wouldn't want the Carrera on the side. I agree with you there.
I agree with you.
And my choice would be Pacific Blue Metallic, which is a darker blue. It's just about perfect. But Minerva Blue also looks good.
Yeah.
All right. Well, everybody, thanks for tuning in once again. Remember to like, listen, subscribe. Hit that little bell if you're on YouTube. We're on all the platforms. Tell your friends about us, and we'll be back at you next week.